Well, welcome back to DFC Books. I'm incredibly ready for this one.
It is so good to be back, and you really should be ready. We are tackling an absolute giant today.
A giant is right. I mean, we're not just talking about a philosophy book today. We were talking about, well, the book, the
Yeah.
center of the solar system for everything this particular author wrote. And honestly, maybe the center of the solar system for Western thought in general. We're talking about Plato's Republic.
The Republic, yeah. It is the work that every other dialogue Plato wrote seems to just orbit around. It's a treatise on education. It's the birth of political science. It is the father of idealism.
Right.
You've got everyone from Milton to Locke, straight through to modern statesmen pulling from this exact text. It is the bedrock.
And it's a big one, 10 books. A lot of ground to cover. But before we get into the heavy lifting, I have a quick request for you listening right now. We want to know what you want us to cover next. So please jump into the comment section wherever you're listening to this and leave us a book request. We read them, we love them, and we really want to build the DSC Books library based on what you are curious about.
Please do. It helps us immensely to know where your interests lie and what questions you're wrestling with.
Okay, so housekeeping done.
Right.
Let's set the scene.
Okay.
Because this isn't just a dry textbook. It's a story.
Right.
It's a conversation.
Exactly. It's a dialogue. And the setting really matters here. We are in the Piraeus.
That's the port of Athens, right?
Correct. It's about 411 BC, or at least that's the dramatic date we usually assign to it. And the Piraeus is the center of trade. It's where the foreigners live. It's noisy. It's bustling.
Yeah.
It represents the mixing of ideas and the sheer chaos of democratic life.
And it's a time of festival, too.
Yes. They are celebrating a goddess, probably Bendis, a Thracian deity. There's a ton of activity. Socrates has gone down to say his prayers and just see the festivities. And he is with Glaucon, who is actually Plato's brother.
Right. And he's trying to leave. He's trying to head back to town, back to Athens proper.
He is. But he gets stopped. Polemarchus, who we will meet properly in a moment, basically sends his slave to grab Socrates by the cloak.
Which is wild.
Yeah. And then Polemarchus and his friends surround him. They essentially say, look, there are more of us than there are of you. You're staying.
Which is such a funny way to start a book about justice. We're going to force you to stay and talk about justice using our superior physical numbers.
It is the first lesson of the book, really. It sets up that core tension between force and persuasion. Polemarchus says, can you persuade us if we refuse to listen? Implying that brute force often just trumps reason.
Yeah.
If I close my ears, your logic means absolutely nothing.
That is a terrifying thought to kick off a philosophy deep dive.
It really is, but they entice Socrates with the promise there is going to be a torch race on horseback later that evening.
A torch race on horseback.
Yeah.
That actually sounds incredible.
It does, right. And they promise a gathering of young men and good conversation. And that is enough to hook Socrates. He loves a good talk, way more than he loves a torch race. So they all retire to the house of Cephalus, who is Polemarchus's father, and that is where the most famous conversation in philosophy begins.
So we have a whole cast of characters here.
Yeah.
And reading through the sources, it seems like Plato is very intentional about who these people are. Like, he never repeats a character in his dialogues, does he?
No, he doesn't, and that's super significant. Each person in the Republic isn't just a random bystander.
Right.
They represent a specific stage of morality or a specific worldview. To understand the arguments, you have to understand who is making them. You cannot separate the speaker from the speech.
Let's start with the host of the house, then. Cephalus.
Cephalus. He is the patriarch. He represents the olden time. He's wealthy, he's very old, and he's what you might call just and blameless. He follows the traditions, he offers sacrifices. He is the absolute embodiment of conventional, pre-philosophical decency.
I love his take on old age. Usually people complain about getting old, losing their drive, losing their, let's call it vigor. But Cephalus is relieved.
It is a beautiful passage. He talks about how other old men complain that they can no longer feast or woo women, feeling like they've lost the best part of life.
Right.
But Cephalus quotes the poet Sophocles. When someone asked Sophocles if he could still make love to a woman, he replied, "Peace, hush, I have escaped from those things, like a slave who has escaped from a mad and furious master."
A mad and furious master? That is such a vivid way to describe the passions and lusts of youth.
Precisely. Cephalus sees old age as a time of peace and freedom. The mad masters have finally let him go. And because he is wealthy, he says he has peace of mind. Not because he can buy things, but because he doesn't owe anyone anything. He hasn't had to deceive anyone or owe sacrifices to the gods or debts to men.
So for him, justice is pretty simple. It's telling the truth and paying your debts. It's very transactional.
Correct. It is proverbial morality. It's the morality of a businessman or a strict traditionalist. Follow the rules, pay what you owe, and you'll sleep well. It's not deep, but it is highly functional.
But Socrates, being Socrates, can't just let that slide. He has to test it.
He immediately pokes a hole in it. He asks, if a friend lends you a weapon when he is sane, and then asks for it back when he has gone mad, is it just to pay that debt?
Oof. Yeah. If you give a sword back to a maniac, you're probably responsible for whatever happens next.
Exactly. So paying debts or giving what is owed cannot be the absolute definition of justice. There are exceptions. Cephalus, to his credit, just laughs. He realizes his definition doesn't hold up to scrutiny, but he doesn't care to argue.
Well, he's too old for this.
Yeah, he hands the argument over to his son Polemarchus and goes off to finish his sacrifices.
He literally exits the chat. I'm out, you kids figure this out.
Yeah.
So now we have Polemarchus, the son and heir.
Polemarchus is the practical man. He's a bit more aggressive than his father, a bit more impetuous. Remember, he's the one who detained Socrates in the street.
Yeah. He tries to defend the traditional view by quoting the poet Simonides. He argues that justice is doing good to your friends and harm to your enemies.
Which, honestly, sounds like how most people operate today. You look out for your crew, and you take down the opposition. It's tribal.
It is a very standard tribal view of justice. It's the code of the playground and the battlefield. But Socrates dismantles this too. He argues that the just man is like a physician or a musician, an expert.
Okay.
And does an expert use their skill to harm? Does a musician use music to make people unmusical? Does a horse trainer use their skill to injure horses?
No, they improve things. That's the entire point of having a skill.
Right. Socrates argues that if justice is a virtue and excellence of the soul, it cannot be used to make another human being worse. To harm someone is to make them less just, to deteriorate their character. So a just man can never harm anyone, not even an enemy.
That is a radical idea for 400 BC. I mean, turn the other cheek wasn't really a thing yet. This is centuries before Christianity. It was incredibly subversive. He is suggesting that the function of goodness is to produce goodness, not to destroy. But before they can settle this, the conversation gets hijacked. Enter Thrasymachus.
The bad boy of philosophy. The source material describes him as a wild beast roaring into the conversation.
Thrasymachus is a sophist. These were paid teachers of rhetoric in Athens. They taught you how to win arguments, not necessarily how to find the truth. And Thrasymachus is deeply cynical. He has been sitting there listening to Socrates pick apart these nice definitions, and he is just boiling over.
He basically demands to be paid before he'll give his answer.
Right, he does. He wants money. Glaucon and the others actually pitch in to pay him just to hear what he has to say. And his definition is famous. He says, justice is nothing else than the interests of the stronger.
Maintenance.
Essentially, he argues that every government, democracy, tyranny, aristocracy makes laws that benefit itself. The ruling class sets the rules, and justice is just a fancy name for obeying the laws that the rulers made to keep themselves in power. If you follow the rules, you are just a sheep getting fleeced by the shepherd.
That is, it's devastatingly cynical. But also hard to refute.
Yeah.
It sounds like something you'd hear on a political talk show today.
It is the great challenge of political philosophy. Is law just a tool of the powerful? Thrasymachus says the unjust man, the tyrant who breaks all the rules and gets away with it, is the happiest man. The poor guy who follows the rules is a sucker. He argues that injustice, if practiced on a large enough scale, is stronger, freer, and more masterful than justice.
So how does Socrates handle the wild beast? Does he get angry?
No, he stays completely calm. He actually uses the shepherd analogy against him. Thrasymachus had argued that shepherds only fatten sheep to eat them or sell them meaning for the shepherd's benefit.
Right.
Socrates pivots back to the definition of an art or a skill. He says, strictly speaking, the art of the shepherd is solely concerned with the good of the sheep. The art of the physician is solely concerned with the health of the patient.
Ah, so the doctor doesn't practice medicine to make money. They practice medicine to heal. The money is a separate thing, a wage-earning art that they have to do to survive.
Exactly. The wage is a necessary evil, but it is not the art itself. If a doctor heals you for free, he is still a doctor. If a doctor kills you for $1 million, he is not a doctor.
Makes sense.
Therefore, a true ruler, in the strict sense of the word, considers not his own interest, but the interest of the subject. Just as a captain considers the safety of the sailors.
That seems to trap Thrasymachus.
It does. Thrasymachus gets flushed. The text says he actually blushes, which is a huge moment, the cynic showing shame. He is charmed like a snake and silenced. He agrees to just nod and say yes and no, like an old woman listening to his story.
But the argument isn't over, because even though Thrasymachus shuts up, the brothers Glaucon and Epaminondas aren't satisfied.
And this is key. Glaucon and Epaminondas are the real interlocutors of the book. As we mentioned, they're Plato's own brothers. They represent the impetuous youth and the man of the world. They don't agree with Thrasymachus, but they don't think Socrates has really proven him wrong.
Yeah.
They think Socrates won the verbal sparring match, but didn't win the war for the soul.
Glaucon basically says, look, Socrates, you prove that justice is better than injustice if we care about rewards and reputation. But what if we strip all that away?
Yes. Glaucon plays devil's advocate brilliantly. He tells the story of the ring of Gyges. It's a ring that makes you invisible. He asks, if a just man and an unjust man both had this ring, wouldn't they both do the exact same things? Wouldn't they both steal, seduce, and kill if they knew they couldn't be caught?
It's the ultimate integrity test. Who are you when no one is looking?
Glaucon demands that Socrates define justice in itself. Not for the rewards, not for the reputation, not because you get into heaven or avoid jail. But is justice good for the soul, even if the whole world thinks you are a criminal and tortures you for it?
That is a very high bar.
It is the highest bar in ethics. And to answer it, Socrates makes a massive pivot. He says, the soul is small and hard to see. The state is large. Let's look for justice in the state first writ large, and then seeing it there, we might recognize it in the individual.
So they decide to build a city, a theoretical city, the city in speech.
Precisely. And this begins the long construction project that takes up books 2, 3, and 4.
And they start simple, right?
Yeah.
Just a city of necessity. Farmers, weavers, cobblers.
Yes. Socrates describes a simple agrarian life. People producing just what they need, feasting on acorns and beans, drinking wine, living in absolute peace. It sounds idyllic.
But Glaucon isn't having it. What does he call it?
He calls it a city of pigs. He says, Socrates, if you were making a city for pigs, this is what you would feed them. He wants relishes, he wants desserts, he wants soft couches and incense, he wants luxury.
He wants civilization as they knew it.
Right. And Socrates, in a very interesting move, agrees. He says, okay, let's look at a fevered state. Because once you introduce luxury, you need more land, you need more resources. And once you need more land,
You needed an army, you need to take it from your neighbor.
you need war. And so the class of the guardians is born. These are the soldiers who will protect the city's wealth. And suddenly, the focus of the book shifts entirely to how to educate these guardians. Because if you have a class of fierce warriors, how do you stop them from turning on the citizens?
You need them to be like sheepdogs, gentle to their masters, fierce to the wolves.
Exactly. And this leads to the famous censorship discussions in books 2 and 3. Socrates bans the poets. He bans Homer.
Which is wild. That's like banning Shakespeare or the Bible and their culture.
It is. But his logic is that Homer shows the gods behaving badly, lying, cheating, lusting, warring. If the guardians are to be virtuous, they must believe that the gods are unchangeable and good. They cannot fear death, so they can't hear scary stories about Hades. Education, for Socrates, is about molding the soul. Music for the soul, gymnastics for the body.
So they build this education system, they purify the city, and by book 4, they are finally ready to look for justice.
This is the climax of the first part of the book. They have built the ideal city. Now, Epaminondas asks, where is the justice? Socrates says, light a candle and search.
And they find the 4 virtues. Let's break these down.
First, they find wisdom. This resides in the rulers, the very small group of guardians who know what is best for the whole state. They are the brains of the operation.
Okay.
Second, they find courage. This resides in the soldiers, the auxiliaries. It is defined as the preservation of opinion about what is to be feared and what isn't. It's the ability to hold on to your values in the face of pain or pleasure. Third, they find temperance. This isn't just in one class. It's the harmony or agreement across the whole city that the best should rule and the others should obey. It's like a musical accord.
And finally, the big one, justice.
They realize justice was under their feet the whole time. It was the founding principle of the city. One man, one art. The idea that everyone should do the job they are naturally best suited for and crucially not meddle in the business of others.
So justice is just minding your own business.
In a way, yes, but it's deeper. It's doing one's own work. It is injustice when the carpenter tries to be a soldier or the soldier tries to be a ruler. That confusion ruins the state. Justice is the structure that keeps everything in its right place. It is the framework that allows wisdom, courage, and temperance to exist.
And here's the magic trick. Socrates takes this map of the state and lays it over the human soul.
The famous tripartite soul. Just as the city has three classes, the soul has three parts.
Okay, walk us through them.
There is the rational part, the little golden man inside who loves truth. That corresponds to the rulers. There is the spirited part, the lion. That's the anger, the honor, the drive that fights for what is right. That corresponds to the soldiers.
And the third?
There's the appetitive or concupiscent part, the multi-headed beast of desires, hunger, thirst, sex, greed. That corresponds to the craftsmen and moneymakers.
And so, a just man is a man whose internal city is in order.
Exactly. A just man is one whose reason rules, supported by spirit, to keep the appetites in check. If the appetites rule, if you just follow your gut or your lust, you are a mob rule of one. You are chaotic. You are unjust. Justice is the health of the soul.
That perfectly answers Glaucon's challenge, doesn't it? Because if justice is health and injustice is disease, then asking, is it better to be just or unjust, is like asking, is it better to be healthy or to have cancer, provided no one knows you have cancer?
Precisely. No amount of money or power is worth it if the very thing that lives your soul is corrupted and ruining itself.
Okay, so they've nailed it. Definition found. Book 4 ends. Everyone is happy, but they don't stop there.
No. Book V begins with a bit of a riot. Socrates is about to move on to discuss the different types of corrupt governments, but the guys stop him. Polemarchus whispers to Adeimantus, "Shall we let him off?"
They want the juicy details. Socrates dropped a hint earlier that friends have all things in common, including wives and children. And guys are like, whoa, wait, what does that mean?
This leads to the three waves. These are three radical proposals that Socrates admits might drown them in laughter and disbelief. He's very hesitant here, which is rare for him.
Let's surf these waves. Wave number 1, gender equality.
Socrates argues that men and women have the same nature when it comes to ruling and guarding the city. The only difference is physical strength. But a woman can be a philosopher, a woman can be a soldier, a woman can be a ruler.
Wow.
In 400 BC Athens, where women were essentially cloistered in the home, this was absolutely revolutionary.
He uses the bald man analogy again here, right? He says you don't judge a bald man and a hairy man as having different natures for cobbling shoes. So why judge men and women differently for ruling?
Right. He says we look at the soul, not the body. If the soul is capable of wisdom, the gender doesn't matter.
Wave number 2. This is the one that usually trips people up. The community of wives and children. And we should say clearly here, we are just explaining Plato's text as it's written. We are not taking sides or endorsing these concepts because this gets pretty extreme.
It does. This applies only to the guardians, remember. Socrates says that for the rulers, there is no private family. No, my wife, my husband, my child.
Why go this far?
Because private family creates private interest. If I want my son to inherit wealth, I might steal from the treasury. If I want to protect my wife, I might betray the army. Socrates wants the guardians to view the entire city as their family. Every elder is their father, every peer is their brother.
And he sets up a breeding program that sounds, well, a lot like eugenics. Again, just reporting the source material here.
It is eugenics. He talks about sacred marriages. They are festivals where the rulers rig the lottery so that the best men mate with the best women to produce the best children, and the children are taken away to a rearing pen immediately. No parent knows their own biological child.
It's cold. Efficient, but cold.
It creates a unity, though. He says the city should feel pleasure and pain like a single body. If you hurt your finger, the whole body says, "My finger hurts." In this city, if one citizen suffers, the whole city suffers. There are no private joys or private griefs among the rulers.
And then the third wave, the biggest one.
The philosopher king. Socrates admits this is the hardest to swallow. He says, until philosophers are kings, or the kings and princes of this world have the spirit and power of philosophy, cities will never have rest from their evils.
It's the ultimate paradox. The people who want power are usually the worst at using it. And the people who would be best at using it, the philosophers, want nothing to do with power.
Correct. The true philosopher loves the sight of truth. They love the idea of the good. They have climbed out of the cave, which is a concept from Book 7, the famous allegory where we are all prisoners watching shadows on a wall.
Right, everyone knows the cave.
The philosopher has broken free, gone outside, and seen the sun. Why would they want to go back down into the dark cave and argue over shadows?
So they have to be compelled.
They must be forced to rule, not for their own happiness, but for the happiness of the whole. It's a burden, not a prize. The best ruler is the one who is reluctant to rule.
This is a lot to take in. The idea that the smartest, most reluctant people should be absolute dictators. It's Tempting, but also terrifying.
It is the central tension of the Republic.
Yeah.
Is this a blueprint for a real government, or is it a satire? Or is it a metaphor for the self?
We're going to get into the decline of this state and the terrifying image of the tyrant in just a second. But first, I want to take a quick second to ask you a favor. If you are enjoying this deep dive, if you're feeling a little more philosophical than you were 20 minutes ago, please hit that subscribe button. It helps us keep these conversations going, and you'll never miss a dive. Go ahead, smash it like a statue of a false idol.
Or like a philosopher smashing a false argument.
Exactly. Subscribe.
Okay, we are back. We have built the shiny, perfect, possibly creepy ideal city. But Socrates knows nothing lasts forever.
Hard is the struggle of the good. In Book 8, Socrates describes how this perfect aristocracy, the rule of the best, inevitably falls apart. It's a cascade of failure.
It starts with a mistake in the breeding program, right? The nuptial number.
Yes, a mathematical error. A chaotic element enters the gene pool. The next generation of rulers is a little less wise, a little more spirited. They start to value honor and victory more than truth. The gold mixes with bronze. This is timocracy, the Spartan-style regime.
So we go from wise rulers to honor-bound soldiers. And then the soldiers discover money. They start hoarding gold in secret. They change the laws to favor the rich. This becomes oligarchy, the rule of the few wealthy. The city splits in two. The city of the rich and the city of the poor plotting against each other.
And the poor eventually get tired of this.
They revolt. They see the rich men are soft and weak. They overthrow them and establish democracy.
Now, we usually think democracy is a good thing, but Plato, not so much. And again, keeping it strictly to the text here.
For Plato, democracy is the rule of license. It's liberty gone mad. Everyone does whatever they want. There is no order. The teacher fears the student. The father fears the son. Even the dogs and donkeys walk in the street expecting you to get out of their way.
He calls it a coat of many colors. It looks beautiful because it has a little bit of everything, but it has no constitution. It's chaos.
And out of this chaos, the ultimate evil arises. The people get drunk on liberty. They find a protector to help them fight the rich, a charismatic leader who makes big promises.
The tyrant.
Tyranny. The end of the line. The protector tastes blood. He purges his enemies. He starts wars to keep the people needing a leader. And eventually, he enslaves the democracy that birthed him.
And this brings us to Book 9. The deep dive into the soul of the tyrant. Because remember, the whole challenge was, is the unjust man happier than the just man? And the tyrant is the most unjust man possible. He has total power and zero morals.
Socrates paints a terrifying picture of the tyrant's inner life. He is not free. He is the most enslaved person on earth. He's terrified of his enemies, terrified of his friends, terrified of the people. He can never relax. He is a prisoner in his own palace.
And his desires.
He is ruled by lawless desires, the kind of thoughts most people only have in nightmares: incest, murder, sacrilege. The tyrant acts these out. He is never satisfied. He is like a vessel full of holes. No matter how much pleasure he pours in, it leaks out and leaves him empty and hungry.
This is where Socrates brings out that incredible image, the composite beast.
Yes, he asks us to imagine the soul as a hollow statue. Inside, there are three creatures joined together. One is a multi-headed monster, gargoyles of pain and wild beasts. This is desire. One is a lion. This is spirit. And one is a man. This is reason.
And the outer shell looks like a man. So when we see a tyrant, we see a powerful human. But inside.
Inside, the tyrant is feeding the monster and the lion. He is starving the man. The monster is growing, roaring, dragging the man around like a slave. The man is weak and bitten.
So when Thrasivacus said injustice is profitable, he was saying it is profitable to feed the monster and starve the human.
Exactly. Who would want that? Who would want to be strong on the outside but be devoured by a beast on the inside? That is why the just man is happier. The just man tames the lion, uses the lion to control the monster, and the man, the reason, rules over all. He has internal peace.
It's such a powerful psychological image. It stops being about politics and starts being about mental health. If you let your addictions, the monster or your temper the lion, run your life, you are miserable, even if you are a king.
That is the victory of the argument. Justice is its own reward because justice is the natural, healthy state of the human soul.
And Book X wraps it all up.
It does. A final banishment of imitative poetry. Sorry, Homer, you're still out. And then the myth of a story of the afterlife.
Because even though justice is good in this life, Socrates wants to show that the consequences are eternal.
The soul is immortal. And in the end, we choose our next lives based on the wisdom we gained in this one. So the stakes are infinite.
So let's unpack this. What does this all mean for us?
Well, there are a few key takeaways. First, the definition of justice. It's not just following laws, it's an internal order. It's doing your own business, letting your reason guide your life, not your appetites.
And the unity of the state. Plato really emphasizes that a fragmented society, rich versus poor, ruler versus ruled, is a sick society.
Yes. In Hegelian terms, the state is the reality of which justice is the ideal. Or in religious terms, the kingdom is within you.
And that's a crucial point the source notes mentioned, the noble lie. We didn't touch on it much, but Socrates admits that sometimes rulers have to use medicinal lies or myths like the metals in the soul to keep the city together.
It raises the question, can a society survive on pure rational truth? Or do we need myths? Do we need stories to bind us?
And finally, the question of whether this city can actually exist.
Lacan asks this. He says, I don't think this city exists anywhere on earth. And Socrates gives the most beautiful answer. He says, in heaven, there is laid up a pattern of it, methinks, which he who desires may behold, and beholding, may set his own house in order.
Set his own house in order.
It doesn't matter if the ideal republic exists in Athens or Sparta or America. It matters if it exists in you. You can found that city within yourself. You can be a philosopher king of your own soul.
That is actually really inspiring. It takes the pressure off fixing the world and puts the focus on fixing yourself. So here is the thought for you to take with you today. If the state is just the soul writ large, take a hard look at your own internal state. Look at your habits, your screen time, your reactions. Are you operating as a chaotic democracy internally, letting every passing desire vote on what you do next? Or are you a tyrant to yourself? Find a way to let reason rule.
That is the ultimate challenge.
Well, on that note, I think my inner lion is getting a little restless, and my inner monster is demanding lunch.
Better keep him in check.
I'll try. Thank you so much for breaking this down with me. This was a heavy one, but absolutely worth it.
A pleasure. There is always more to find in Plato.
And thank you to everyone listening. We really appreciate you tuning in to DFC Books. Don't forget to leave those comments and subscribe. Go build that city within yourself. We'll see you next time.